CEO followed a single dad, janitor after work. What she found changed everything. Victoria Chen had built Horizon Technologies from a two-person startup in her garage to a billion-dollar empire in just 12 years. If you believe in kindness, second chances, and the power of small moments to change lives, please like, comment, share, and subscribe to Kindness True Stories. Also, tell us in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? Her name appeared on magazine covers. Her schedule was packed with board meetings and investor calls, and her glass-walled corner office on the 42nd floor overlooked the entire city like a throne above the clouds. People admired her. People feared her. But somewhere along the way, Victoria had quietly stopped seeing the people who worked beneath her, not out of cruelty, but out of the kind of blindness that success slowly builds around a person like a wall of gold. That all changed on a Tuesday evening in November, because of a man she had never truly noticed before, and a humming sound that she would never forget. It was nearly 9 o'clock at night when Victoria stepped out of a late board meeting, her heels clicking against the polished marble floors of the empty hallway. Most employees had gone home hours ago. The building felt hollow, the way expensive things often do when no one is using them. She was scrolling through emails on her phone, barely watching where she was walking, when she heard it, a soft, low humming coming from around the corner. It was a gentle melody, something between a lullaby and a hymn, quiet enough to almost miss, but warm enough to stop her completely. She turned the corner and saw him. Marcus Wilson, the night janitor, was mopping the floor near the elevator bank with slow, careful strokes. He was a tall man in his late 30s, broad-shouldered but with a gentleness about him that the blue uniform couldn't hide. He didn't notice Victoria standing there. His eyes were distant, focused on something far beyond the gleaming floor in front of him, and he was humming that melody with the kind of tenderness a person reserves for someone they love deeply. Victoria had seen Marcus before, the way you see furniture, aware of its presence without ever really looking at it. He had worked the night shift at Horizon for almost 3 years. She knew his name only because it appeared on a staffing report she had once skimmed. But something about the way he hummed in that empty hallway made her stop walking, stop scrolling, and simply watch. There was a weight in his posture, a heaviness that had nothing to do with the mop in his hands. It looked like the weight of a man carrying something enormous entirely alone. She walked to the elevator, pressed the button, and told herself she was imagining things, but the humming followed her all the way home. The next evening, Victoria came back to the office late on purpose. She told her assistant it was for a project review, but really she came back because she couldn't stop thinking about that melody. Marcus was there again, this time cleaning the windows in the conference room. His reflection ghosted against the dark glass of the city night. This time, Victoria did something she almost never did anymore. She said hello. Marcus startled slightly, then straightened and nodded respectfully. "Good evening, Miss Chen." His voice was steady but careful, the voice of a man who had learned to take up as little space as possible around people with power. "That song you were humming last night," Victoria said, surprising even herself. "What is it?" Marcus looked at her for a moment, as if calculating whether the question was safe to answer. Then something in his eyes softened. "It's a song I made up for my daughter," he said quietly. "I hum it when I miss her." Victoria asked how old his daughter was. Marcus said she was 7. He said her name was Lily, and then, because Victoria kept asking gentle questions with what seemed like genuine curiosity, Marcus told her a little more. Lily had cystic fibrosis. She spent more time in hospitals than in school. The treatments were ongoing, expensive, and exhausting. Marcus worked the night shift at Horizon because the pay was slightly better than day shifts, and because his neighbor, an elderly woman named Mrs. Okafor, could watch Lily in the evenings for a small fee. He spent his days taking Lily to appointments, doing her airway clearance therapy, fighting with insurance companies on the phone, and trying to be everything a child needed when one parent had to be everything at once. His wife had left 3 years ago, unable to cope with the grief and pressure of Lily's diagnosis. Marcus didn't say this with bitterness. He said it the way people speak about rain, as something that happened, that you had to keep living through. Victoria listened to all of this standing in a conference room that cost more to furnish than Marcus earned in 5 years. She didn't know what to say, so she just said, "She's lucky to have you." Marcus smiled, a small, tired, genuine smile. "I'm the lucky one," he said. "She teaches me something new every single day." Victoria went home that night and sat in her kitchen for a long time, without turning on the lights. She kept thinking about Lily, a little girl she had never met, fighting for breath in a world that had already asked so much of her father. She thought about Marcus humming in an empty hallway because he missed a child he was working this hard to protect, and she thought about herself, about the version of herself that had started Horizon Technologies because she genuinely wanted to build something that made people's lives better. When had she stopped thinking about people's lives? The next morning, Victoria called her head of HR before the regular workday began. She asked for a full review of the employee benefits package, specifically around dependent healthcare coverage, flexible scheduling for caregivers, and emergency financial assistance programs. Her HR director, caught off guard, said that a review had been proposed 2 years ago, but had been deprioritized due to budget concerns. Victoria said to unprioritize it immediately. Over the following 2 weeks, she quietly did something she hadn't done in years. She walked the floors. Not as an inspection, not with a camera crew for a company newsletter, but genuinely and alone. She talked to people in the mailroom, in the cafeteria kitchen, in the loading dock. She asked them about their families, their challenges, what would make their lives at Horizon feel more human. What she found did not make her proud. She found employees skipping meals to afford their children's school supplies. She found people driving 2 hours each way because they couldn't afford to live near the office. She found a woman in accounting who had been quietly managing her mother's dementia from her desk, terrified to tell anyone because she feared losing her job. She found that Horizon Technologies, for all its awards and accolades and glossy annual reports, had quietly become a place where people survived rather than thrived. She found that success had made her institution cold without anyone ever deciding to make it that way. It had just happened. Gradually, the way warmth leaves a room when no one tends the fire. Victoria went back to Marcus on a Friday evening. 3 weeks after their first real conversation, she asked if she could sit with him on his break. Marcus, clearly uncertain what to make of any of this, said yes. They sat in the break room with paper cups of coffee, and Victoria told him what she was planning. A new emergency healthcare fund for employees, dealing with serious dependent illness, expanded insurance, coverage that specifically included cystic fibrosis treatments and equipment, a caregiver flexibility program that would allow parents of critically ill children to adjust their schedules without penalty, a mentorship and internal mobility track so that night shift workers who wanted to grow within the company had a clear, supported path to do so. Marcus listened to all of it without speaking. When she finished, he looked down at his coffee cup for a long moment. Then he looked up, and Victoria saw that his eyes were wet. "Why are you telling me this?" he asked. "Because you started it," she said simply. "That song you were humming. It reminded me why any of this is supposed to matter." Marcus pressed his lips together and nodded slowly. He didn't say anything grand or dramatic. He just said, "Lily is going to think that's pretty cool." Victoria laughed, a real laugh, the kind she hadn't heard come out of herself in longer than she could remember. 6 months later, Horizon Technologies launched the People First initiative publicly, and it became one of the most discussed corporate welfare programs in the country. 17 other companies reached out to Victoria, asking how to implement something similar. 3 of them did. Employees who had been quietly drowning came forward and received help they had never expected to ask for from a corporation. The woman in accounting finally told HR about her mother and was given a supported, remote arrangement that let her provide care without losing her livelihood. The loading dock worker who had been driving 4 hours a day was connected to a housing assistance program the company partnered with. None of this made the news in the way Victoria's product launches did, but it changed things in a way that those launches never had. Marcus was eventually offered a role in the company's new employee wellness coordination team, a position that let him work days, advocate for workers in difficult situations, and tell his own story to help others feel less alone. He took it. He still hummed sometimes in the hallways of Horizon, and now people recognized the melody because he had told them it was Lily's song. Lily herself, now 8 years old, had a photograph of the Horizon Technologies lobby on her hospital room wall because her dad had told her that a building full of people cared whether she got better. She had drawn a card for Victoria that Marcus brought in one morning, a crayon drawing of 2 stick figures, one tall and one small, holding hands under a yellow sun, with the words, "Thank you for seeing my daddy," written in careful, uneven letters across the top. Victoria framed it and hung it in her office, replacing the industry award that had occupied that wall for 6 years. Visitors always asked about it. She always told the whole story, because the lesson of Marcus and Lily was not about what one powerful person could do for one struggling family. It was about what happens when someone with the ability to change systems finally decides to actually look at the people those systems affect. It was about the humming in an empty hallway that one tired, determined father sent out into the air simply because he loved his daughter and had no other way, in that moment, to reach her. And it was about a CEO who was lucky enough to be walking by when the music started, and wise enough finally to stop and listen. If this story moved you and made you believe a little more in the goodness that ordinary people carry quietly through extraordinary hardship, please show your support by liking this video, sharing it with someone who needs a reminder that kindness still exists in this world, and subscribing to our channel, Kindness True Stories, where we bring you real and heartfelt tales of human compassion, connection, and the moments that remind us what truly matters.